Losing love. Two behaviors reveal it first. Setting the stage, the unspoken language of departing love. Love, that seemingly invincible force, rarely crumbles in dramatic explosions of anger and conflict. The Hollywood image of shattering glass and tearful accusations often obscures a far more subtle and insidious erosion. More often than not, love simply fades. It retreats quietly, leaving behind an almost imperceptible vacuum, a chilling absence where warmth once resided. It departs without trumpets or farewells, before the mind can even fully grasp the shift. One day, you find yourself gazing at the familiar face, hearing the echo of the beloved voice, yet the vibrant, undeniable connection has dissolved, leaving behind a hollow shell of forced interactions and stilted conversations. This isn't about malice or conscious cruelty. It's the heartbreaking reality of human emotions, the natural ebb and flow of affection, the inevitable shifting of attention and desire. Hearts, like wandering stars, move on, often not fueled by resentment, but by a gradual, soul-deepening indifference. And it is precisely this quiet indifference that becomes the most difficult truth to confront. Have you ever experienced that profound sense of isolation while standing shoulder to shoulder with someone you deeply cherish? A sensation of being physically present, yet emotionally invisible, as though a transparent barrier has sprung up, rendering your presence insignificant? There's no blazing battle, no dramatic farewell scene, just an oppressive silence, an ever-widening chasm separating what was from the stark reality of what is. The philosopher Marcus Aurelius, a beacon of Stoic wisdom, astutely observed, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. When a loved one begins to withdraw, our suffering stems not solely from their distancing, but from our fierce resistance to the inevitable. We cling tenaciously to the ghost of how things used to be, while reality relentlessly drifts further and further from our desperate grasp. Today, we embark on an exploration of a deeply personal and often painful truth. When love embarks on its departure, it inevitably reveals itself through two distinct signals. These signs are not loud, nor are they intentionally cruel. Instead, they are subtle, quiet, and undeniably clear, if you are willing to open your heart and mind to truly see them. To illuminate these truths, we will journey into a serene, almost timeless village, where a humble man is confronted with the very essence of every lover's deepest fear. He learns not through fiery arguments, nor shocking acts of betrayal, but through the stark, unsettling language of silence and emotional emptiness. These intangible forces teach him lessons far more profoundly than any spoken word ever could. Within his story, we shall unearth the two primary signs that signal the departure of love, unveiling the quiet whispers that reveal the fading embers of the heart. The story of Elias and Lionah, a village tale of shifting seasons. Nestled within a tranquil valley, embraced by rolling, verdant hills and vast, sun-drenched fields, lay a quaint village steeped in simplicity and tradition. Here lived Elias, a farmer of humble means and simple pleasures. His life was governed by the rhythm of the sun. He rose with its first light, diligently worked the land with unwavering care, and returned home each evening, his heart drawn by the presence of the one person who transformed his labor into a joyful purpose. Her name was Lionah, his wife, his beloved, his home. Their life was not a tapestry of flawless perfection. Rather, it was a mosaic of shared glances across the dinner table, the soft, comforting cadence of laughter echoing through their small garden, the whispered secrets exchanged in the quiet darkness before sleep. Years unfurled like the turning pages of a cherished book, and though time etched its passage upon their faces, Elias held steadfastly to the belief that their hearts remained eternally intertwined, an unbreakable bond forged in mutual affection and unwavering loyalty. Until one autumn, a change, subtle yet unsettling, began to manifest itself. It wasn't a singular, cataclysmic event. No explosive argument, no shocking act of betrayal. Instead, it was a gradual cooling, a quiet withdrawal, a colder intensity in her gaze, a curtness in her responses. Elias noticed, with a growing unease, that Lyanna no longer greeted him at the door as he returned from the fields, her face radiant with welcome. Meals were meticulously prepared, but left silently on the table, devoid of the warmth of shared conversation. She no longer inquired about the trials and triumphs of his day, nor did she eagerly share the details of her own. Initially, Elias dismissed it as fatigue, attributing the change to the demanding rhythms of the season. He reasoned that it was merely a passing mood, a fleeting shadow cast by the changing light. But as the weeks drifted by, the distance between them expanded, a widening gulf filled with unspoken anxieties and growing uncertainties. Her eyes seemed to wander elsewhere, her mind occupied by thoughts and emotions she no longer entrusted to him. Desperate to rekindle the fading embers of their love, Elias redoubled his efforts to revive the warmth they once shared. He brought home her favorite freshly baked bread from the bustling town market, a gesture intended to evoke cherished memories of shared joy. He tended their small garden with even greater care, nurturing the delicate blossoms as if they were symbols of their fragile connection. He even read aloud, in the evenings, the romantic poems she once held so dear, hoping to rekindle the spark of their shared passions. But her smiles, once genuine and radiant, now seemed strained, polite, distant. They were the smiles one might offer a stranger enacting the role of a husband, a performance observed with detached amusement rather than heartfelt recognition. Elias felt lost, adrift in a sea of emotional uncertainty. He confided in no one, not the gossiping neighbors, not even his own brother who resided in the nearby village. Instead, burdened by a growing despair, he packed a small bag one morning and set off, his footsteps leading him towards the dense, ancient forest that bordered their village. It was said, in hushed whispers, that deep within the heart of the woods, in a secluded clearing where the sunlight struggled to penetrate the thick canopy, lived an enigmatic old man known only as the Watcher. The Watcher was not a sage adorned with titles, nor a priest bound by duty. He was simply a man who had once known profound love, experienced devastating loss, and had chosen to live in quiet solitude, observing the world with a patient, understanding eye. Those who sought him out came not seeking definitive answers, but rather a shift in perspective, a renewed sense of clarity amidst the turmoil of their lives. Elias found the Watcher seated on a weathered wooden bench outside his humble cottage, his gaze fixed upon the leaves as they surrendered their hold on the branches and danced in swirling patterns towards the earth. The old man offered no greeting, no words of welcome. He simply gestured for Elias to sit beside him. For what seemed like an eternity, they sat in profound silence, their eyes following the graceful, spiraling descent of the autumn leaves. Finally, Elias, his voice thick with emotion, broke the stillness. "I think she no longer loves me," he confessed, his words barely audible. "But I cannot prove it. She is still physically present, yet I feel utterly alone, as if I am living alongside a ghost." The Watcher nodded slowly, his eyes filled with a profound understanding. "When the wind changes direction," he said softly, "the leaves must inevitably fall. They do not seek permission, nor do they offer explanations. They simply know, with an innate certainty, that their season has come to an end." Elias looked down at his hands, his heart heavy with despair. "So what do I do?" he pleaded. "How can I know for certain if my fears are justified?" The Watcher bent down, picked up a brittle, crimson leaf from the bench, and held it aloft, allowing the sunlight to illuminate its delicate veins. "Love does not vanish with thunderous pronouncements," he said, his voice gentle yet firm. "It leaves in silence, its vibrancy fading like the green of a leaf as it approaches its final days. First, the edges begin to wither. Then, the color leaches away, leaving behind a pale imitation of its former glory. and finally, it breaks away entirely, severing its connection to the branch that once sustained it. There are always signs, but they are not shouted from the rooftops. They are whispered, almost imperceptibly, in the quiet spaces between words and actions. The watcher rose from the bench and walked towards a towering oak tree at the edge of the clearing, its branches reaching towards the sky like supplicating arms. "This tree," he said, his voice filled with reverence, "has stood here for longer than I have been alive. Each year, it releases that which no longer serves it, not with anger, nor with sorrow, but with a quiet, unwavering wisdom born of experience." Elias followed him, his eyes fixed on the branches swaying gently in the breeze. "You wish to know if love has departed from your life?" the watcher asked, turning to face him. "Then listen closely. Do not force her to speak words she may not yet understand herself. Do not demand clarity from someone whose own heart is shrouded in uncertainty. Simply watch, observe, and allow the signs to reveal themselves. When they do," he continued, reaching out and placing the brittle leaf in Elias's palm, "you will not need to ask any further questions. You will already know, with a certainty that transcends the need for verbal confirmation." In that tranquil clearing, enveloped by the rustling whispers of the trees, shedding what they no longer needed, Elias began to grasp a truth he had long resisted believing: that love, like all things in the natural world, is subject to the cyclical rhythms of the seasons. And when someone begins to drift away from you, the universe does not announce it with dramatic pronouncements. Instead, it whispers its secrets through the subtle language of silence, through small, almost imperceptible absences, through the chilling emptiness of mornings that once radiated warmth. What remains is not the frantic, desperate fight to cling to a love that is slipping through your fingers, but the quiet strength to bear witness to its inevitable transformation. And within the gentle falling of those first leaves, two unmistakable signs inevitably emerge. Sign number 1, the closing of the inner world, when the heart's voice grows silent. The days that followed Elias's return to the village passed with an unsettling tranquility. Lionel remained present, her movements familiar, her actions predictable. She cooked, she cleaned, she inquired about the progress of the crops, her voice even maintaining a semblance of its former warmth. But something essential, something intangible yet profoundly significant, had irrevocably vanished. Now that Elias had been taught to listen, truly listen, beyond the surface of words, he could hear it with painful clarity. It was the oppressive silence that hung heavy between their words, the palpable lack of depth in their conversations. The interactions that once meandered effortlessly through shared thoughts and intertwined dreams were now clipped, efficient, functional, and sterile. She spoke like someone carefully guarding a secret, not necessarily concealing some scandalous truth, but rather protecting the emptiness of an emotional void. She had simply ceased to invite him into the labyrinth of her thoughts and feelings. Elias vividly recalled the evenings they had spent huddled by the crackling fire, lost in hours of intimate conversation. They had shared their deepest fears, their most audacious hopes, their seemingly meaningless little observations that somehow served to deepen their bond. Now, her responses to his questions were perfunctory nods, monosyllabic answers designed to provide only the information he needed and nothing more. It wasn't overt hostility, but a profound and unsettling retreat. One evening, driven by a desperate longing to recapture the spark of their past, Elias asked Lionel what had brought her joy that day. She looked at him with a flicker of confusion, and then replied, with a shrug, that nothing in particular had stood out. The moment hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. The room felt colder, the silence amplified. It was like knocking expectantly on a door that had once been perpetually open, only to find it now firmly locked, with no explanation offered for its sudden closure. When someone ceases to share their inner world with you, it is not always a sign that they are harboring a secret or concealing a betrayal. More often than not, It signifies that they no longer feel the compelling need to draw you into the intricate tapestry of their thoughts and emotions. The vibrant connection that once flowed freely between two souls becomes a one-sided endeavor. You continue to reach out, extending your hand in a gesture of intimacy, but nothing comes back to meet you. The silence is not a weapon, but a shield. It is not loud, nor is it intentionally cruel, but it is undeniably unmistakable in its message. The Watcher had spoken of this phenomenon, referring to it as the closing of the gate. He explained to Elias that every individual carries within them an inner garden, a sanctuary of memories, emotions, and dreams. To truly love someone is to be granted an invitation into that sacred space, to wander along its winding paths, to nurture its fragile beauty. And when that person begins to withdraw their love, the first, almost instinctive, act is to close that gate. Not with anger or a barrage of final words, but slowly, silently, and almost imperceptibly. The gate closes when they stop sharing the mundane details of their day, when they omit crucial details they once eagerly rushed to share, when they cease to seek your opinion or perspective, not because they're deliberately hiding something, but because your thoughts and feelings no longer hold the same significance in shaping their own. Elias now saw it with devastating clarity. Lyanna had retreated behind walls that had once been transparent, revealing the vulnerability of her heart. She still smiled at him, still offered him a cup of tea in the afternoon, but her thoughts and emotions were guarded, locked away in a secret chamber of her soul. Her joys and frustrations, her small, everyday discoveries, her private sorrows and anxieties, were no longer brought to him as offerings of intimacy. And that, more than any argument or accusation, told him everything he needed to know. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus wisely counseled, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." But what transpires when there is nothing left to hear? What happens when the person you love no longer offers you anything to listen to, when the wellspring of their inner world has seemingly run dry? The answer is both profoundly difficult and achingly simple. You accept it. In the realm of Stoic thought, suffering arises not from the event itself, but from our judgment of it. When someone ceases to share their inner life with you, the pain does not stem solely from the oppressive silence. It originates from your deep-seated expectation that they should continue to speak, that they are obligated to perpetually grant you access to the sacred space of their heart. The painful truth is that we can never truly own another person's inner world. We are merely guests, privileged with an invitation to dwell within its boundaries. And when that invitation is revoked, the wise and dignified course of action is not to break down the door in a desperate attempt to reclaim entry, but to bow gracefully and walk away with unwavering self-respect. Elias began to speak less, not out of spite or resentment, but out of a newfound understanding. He no longer posed questions that he knew would be answered with polite indifference. He ceased his efforts to stir warmth in a place where only routine and obligation remained. Instead, he became a quiet observer, meticulously noting every nuance of her behavior, every subtle shift in her demeanor. And in that careful observation, he discovered the truth, not in what was being said, but in what was no longer being spoken. This is the first undeniable sign that love has begun to fade. The voice of the heart grows increasingly quiet until it is barely a whisper. They no longer share their fears, their hopes, their dreams, their innermost thoughts. You may still occupy a physical space in their life, but you're no longer a resident of their inner world. And once you have been evicted from the sacred landscape of their mind, their outward actions will inevitably follow, paving the way for your ultimate departure. The first leaf has fallen, its descent a harbinger of the coming winter. The garden gate, once invitingly open, is now firmly and irrevocably closed. Sign number 2, the silent comparisons, measuring you against an unattainable ideal. It was late afternoon when Elias noticed it again, that subtle yet unsettling shift in Lyanna's gaze. They were strolling through the village market, a routine they had often enjoyed in the past. The rhythm of their footsteps used to be perfectly synchronized, their movements mirroring each other's with an unspoken understanding. They would pause at the same stalls, their laughter echoing as they examined the strange and exotic fruits, carefully selecting spices together, their choices reflecting a shared palate and a mutual appreciation for the simple pleasures of life. But today, her eyes seemed to wander, her attention diverted not by the vibrant displays of produce or the tempting aromas emanating from the food stalls, but by the other people who populated the bustling marketplace. He observed, with a growing sense of unease, as her gaze lingered on a young couple laughing and embracing near the baker's shop. Her expression remained impassive, betraying no obvious signs of envy or sadness. It was simply a quiet, almost clinical observation, as though she were studying a species she no longer recognized as her own. She looked at them the way one might look at something once familiar and cherished, but now relegated to the distant realm of memory. Later that evening, as they drew water from the village well, she complimented the dress of another woman, a passing comment delivered in a tone that was seemingly casual and innocuous. But something in her voice, a subtle inflection or perhaps a fleeting glimmer in her eyes, made Elias feel as though he had just been silently measured against some unknown standard and found wanting. She did not utter a single hurtful word, yet every glance away from him, every silent admiration of another's qualities, cut deeper than any overt criticism ever could. When someone begins to fall out of love, they often engage in a subtle, almost unconscious act of comparison, not openly nor cruelly, but quietly, almost to themselves. They begin to notice what others possess that you do not, what qualities they admire in strangers that they once found captivating in you. They may not even be consciously aware of what they are doing, but you feel it nonetheless, a palpable shift in their perception of you. The laughter you once shared together becomes muted, replaced by a strained politeness. The habits and quirks they once found endearing now seem irritating, grating on their nerves like a discordant note in a once harmonious melody. Your presence, once a source of comfort and reassurance, transforms into a constant reminder of an idealized vision they can no longer find in you. The Watcher had spoken of this insidious phenomenon. He told Elias the story of a talented sculptor who had once carved a statue of his wife, his hands shaping the clay with a reverence born of deep affection. He crafted the statue from memory, believing that it perfectly captured her essence, the radiant beauty that had first captivated his heart. But over time, influenced by the fleeting whims of fashion and the unattainable ideals perpetuated by society, he began to add features that did not belong to her, altering the original form with details that were foreign to her true nature. He sculpted a more elegant smile, a straighter posture, softer, more alluring eyes. He continued to insist that the statue was still her likeness, but the truth was that it had gradually transformed into someone else entirely, an idealized version of womanhood that she could never hope to embody. This is the insidious power of comparison. It subtly replaces genuine connection with an imagined ideal, eroding the foundation of love with the corrosive acid of unattainable perfection. It shifts the focus from the shared experiences, the mutual understanding, the unwavering acceptance of flaws and imperfections, to a relentless pursuit of that which is perceived to be missing. It fosters a sense of dissatisfaction, replacing gratitude with a gnawing desire for something more, something different, something that ultimately exists only in the realm of fantasy. And it always begins quietly, subtly, almost imperceptibly. You will notice it in the tone they adopt when speaking about others, in the way their eyes light up when listening to someone else's story, while growing dim when you share your own. You will sense it in the subtle distance they create between you, in the way they begin to see you not as a conscious choice, a deliberate affirmation of love, but as a mere habit, a comfortable routine devoid of passion or excitement. Marcus Aurelius, in his timeless wisdom, wrote, "Be content to seem what you really are." But when someone is no longer content with who you are, when they begin to silently resent the very essence of your being, their restlessness inevitably reveals itself in the subtle language of comparison. Not in explicit arguments or hurtful complaints, but in fleeting glances, wistful sighs, and the oppressive silence that fills the space between two hearts drifting apart. Elias began to sense it in every room they entered together, a subtle but unmistakable tension that permeated the air. He noticed how Lyanna no longer reached for his hand when they walked through the village streets, how she smiled more readily and more frequently at others than at him, how she admired qualities in strangers that he could never hope to possess, without ever uttering a single word of direct criticism. There is a unique and profound pain in being silently measured against an unattainable ideal, a torment that surpasses the sting of overt rejection. It is the aching realization of being seen, yet not truly cherished, of being physically present, yet emotionally absent, of standing beside someone who is already mentally, emotionally, and perhaps even spiritually imagining themselves with someone else. The Stoics teach us not to chase after that which lies beyond our control. We cannot dictate how someone else feels, nor can we prevent them from comparing us to others. But we can choose not to engage in the same destructive behavior. We can choose to accept that love built on comparison is not authentic love at all, but a mere performance, a hollow imitation of the genuine connection we crave. And we are not actors, bound to play a role scripted by someone else's insecurities and unrealistic expectations. When someone silently compares you to others, they cease to see you as inherently enough. They fixate on the qualities you do not possess, overlooking the unique gifts and virtues that make you who you are. This is the second, undeniable sign that the heart has shifted its allegiance, that it is now looking outward towards a fleeting and unattainable ideal, instead of inward, towards the enduring and profound beauty of authentic connection. Elias did not confront Lyanna, nor did he beg her to see him differently, to recognize the value of their shared history. He simply watched, listened, and observed. And what he saw was a woman still present in body, still performing the outward rituals of their marriage, but already walking away in spirit, her heart and mind fixed on a distant horizon. Love begins with admiration, a genuine appreciation for the unique qualities that draw two souls together. But it fades when that admiration is redirected, when the focus shifts from the inherent worth of the individual to the perceived perfection of an idealized image. And the most painful aspect of this slow erosion is not the fear of being replaced, but the agonizing realization of being slowly forgotten while still standing right in front of the person you love. That is how the second leaf falls, its silent descent, a harbinger of the coming emotional winter. Not with a dramatic pronouncement, nor a conscious decision, but with a subtle shift in gaze, a quiet withdrawal of affection, a soul-deep weariness that no longer sees the inherent beauty and value of who you are. Navigating the storm, choosing peace over pride. After many days of careful observation and silent contemplation, Elias returned once more to the sanctuary of the forest. He found the Watcher sitting on the same weathered bench, his eyes turned towards the same ancient trees, still shedding their leaves in a poignant dance of surrender. Elias sat beside him, the weight of his unspoken sorrow hanging heavily in the air between them. "I have seen the signs," he finally said, his voice barely a whisper. "She no longer shares her inner world with me, and I feel her silently comparing me to qualities and attributes I cannot hope to possess. So what should I do now? How do I navigate this storm?" The Watcher did not offer an immediate answer. Instead, he bent down, scooped up a handful of fallen leaves from the forest floor, and slowly, deliberately, allowed them to slip through his fingers one by one. He watched, with a quiet detachment, as they drifted on the breeze, surrendering to the currents of the wind without resistance. "You cannot chase the wind," he said softly, his voice barely audible above the rustling leaves. "And you cannot force a leaf to cling to a branch that no longer nourishes it." Elias lowered his head, his heart heavy with the burden of his unspoken fears. "Should I fight for her? he pleaded. Should I beg her to stay, to reconsider her feelings? The watcher shook his head gently, his eyes filled with a profound understanding. You can certainly ask, he conceded. You can weep, you can plead, you can attempt to articulate every ache and longing in your heart. But if her heart has already embarked on its own solitary journey, your words will fall on deaf ears. You would not be speaking to the woman she is now, but rather to the fading memory of who she once was. He paused, allowing the weight of his words to sink deep into Elias's soul. That, he continued, is the true source of pain in matters of the heart. Not that love inevitably ends, but that we relentlessly attempt to cling to what has already vanished, to hold on to a ghost that no longer exists. The timeless teachings of Stoics remind us that true strength arises from accepting reality, not from futilely resisting the inevitable. Epictetus, that beacon of Stoic wisdom, astutely observed, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is attained by a reliance on internal strength to meet the demands of external change, and it is achieved by relinquishing our attachment to that which lies beyond our control. You cannot control how someone else feels, nor can you force love to return to a heart that has already turned away. You cannot make someone stay if their spirit has already departed. But you can control something far more powerful, your own response, your own actions, your own unwavering commitment to self-respect. Elias sat still, his eyes fixed on the tapestry of leaves that carpeted the forest floor, a silent symphony of impermanence and surrender. And how do I achieve this acceptance? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. How do I find the strength to let go? By not begging for attention or affection, the watcher replied, his voice firm yet gentle. By refusing to lower your own inherent worth in a desperate attempt to chase after something that no longer recognizes your value. By standing firmly where you are, grounded in your own self-respect, and choosing the quiet dignity of peace over the fleeting gratification of pride. He paused, allowing his words to resonate in the stillness of the forest. When someone begins to leave, he continued, do not pursue them into the darkness, do not attempt to drag them back into the light. Let them walk their chosen path, however painful it may be for you to witness. And if they choose to return, let it be by their own free will, drawn by the irresistible pull of genuine affection, not coerced by guilt or manipulated by your desperate pleas. And if they do not return, then you will still be standing, whole and undiminished, your spirit unbroken by the weight of their departure. The greatest mistake we make in matters of the heart is clinging to the illusion that letting go signifies a lack of caring, a failure of commitment. But the opposite is true. Letting go signifies that we cared enough to respect their autonomy, to honor their truth, to release them from the chains of our own desires. It means that we loved enough to prioritize their happiness, even if it meant relinquishing our own. It means we valued authenticity over fantasy and the integrity of our own souls above the fleeting gratification of clinging to a love that was no longer real. Elias asked, his voice filled with a quiet resolve. So what should I do tomorrow? How do I begin to rebuild my life, piece by piece, in the aftermath of this loss? The watcher smiled, a gentle expression that radiated warmth and understanding. You rise, he said simply. You water your fields, nurturing the seeds of new beginnings. You greet the sun with gratitude, acknowledging the enduring promise of a new day. You care for your life with unwavering dedication, because it is still yours, inherently and irrevocably, even if someone has chosen to step out of it. Let them go, Elias, but do more than just let go. Choose yourself. Choose to live fully, vibrantly, and authentically. Choose to build a future that does not depend on the capricious whims of someone else's heart. Because the one thing you must never lose, the one treasure you must guard with unwavering vigilance, is your own soul, your own sense of self-worth, your own unwavering belief in your inherent goodness. Do not sacrifice your own essence in a desperate attempt to keep someone else's love alive. That, the watcher explained, is what true Stoic strength truly embodies. Not coldness, not indifference, Not an emotionless detachment from the world, but a profound and unwavering courage. The courage to remain grounded when everything around you is shifting and uncertain. The courage to keep walking even when the path beside you is empty. The strength to embrace solitude without succumbing to despair. It is the profound and liberating realization that you are enough, inherently and irrevocably, regardless of who chooses to walk alongside you. Elias did not return home consumed by anger or resentment. He did not demand answers or seek explanations. He did not break the oppressive silence with accusations or recriminations. He simply began to live differently, embracing a new rhythm of existence, a new way of being in the world. He still rose early, his movements governed by the rhythm of the sun. He still worked his fields with unwavering diligence, nurturing the land with his calloused hands. But there was a newfound stillness within him, a quiet sense of peace that arose not from certainty, but from the profound and liberating act of release. He no longer waited for Lionel to turn back towards him, her face radiant with the warmth of rekindled affection. He no longer searched her eyes for fleeting glimpses of the love he once knew. He accepted what was, without resistance, without judgment, without the burden of impossible expectations. And in that profound and liberating act of acceptance, something shifted within him. One morning, he stood at the edge of his land, his gaze sweeping across the rows of crops, their stalks swaying gently in the breeze. The season was changing once more, the air growing crisper, the trees standing bare against the horizon. Yet the land was still vibrantly alive, teeming with the promise of new growth and new beginnings. And so was he. He looked towards the window of their home and saw his own reflection staring back at him. Not as a man who had been abandoned or left behind, but as a man who had made the conscious choice not to lose himself in the wreckage of a broken love. Love does not always endure. Sometimes it changes form, transforming into something different than what we initially envisioned. Sometimes it becomes a cherished memory, a poignant reminder of what once was. Sometimes it becomes a painful lesson, a catalyst for growth and self-discovery. But it always leaves us changed, indelibly marked by the experience of its presence and its departure. The Stoics taught that we do not truly own anything in this life. Not our possessions, not our relationships, not even the fleeting emotions we desperately hope will last forever. All that we truly possess is the present moment, the ability to respond to whatever life throws our way with reason, courage, and grace. And the strength to let go of that which no longer serves us, without bitterness or resentment. Elias learned that letting go was not an act of weakness, but the highest form of strength, a testament to his unwavering belief in himself and in the enduring power of life to heal and renew. It was the quiet recognition that whatever had left him was not meant to define him, but to refine him, to strip away the inessential and reveal the enduring strength of his spirit. And in that profound act of surrender, he discovered something far greater than closure. He found peace. Conclusion: the call to self-reflection and shared wisdom. Now, I ask you, have you ever encountered these subtle yet unmistakable signs in your own relationships? Have you felt the quiet withdrawal of someone who once eagerly invited you into the sacred space of their inner world? Have you sensed the silent comparisons, the subtle shifts in gaze that told you, in a language unspoken yet profoundly understood, that your love was no longer enough? If you have, please know that you're not alone. We have all, at some point in our lives, stood in that quiet, unsettling place, wondering if we should fight to reclaim what is lost or surrender to the inevitable and embark on the difficult journey of letting go. We have all wrestled with the agonizing question of whether letting go makes us weak or whether it is, in fact, the ultimate expression of wisdom and strength. So, I invite you now to share your story. Take a moment to reflect deeply on your own experiences and write down your thoughts and feelings in the comments below. By sharing your story, you not only embark on your own healing journey, but you also offer a beacon of hope and guidance to others who may be struggling to navigate similar challenges. Tell us how you found the courage to let go, how you cultivated the strength to embrace solitude without succumbing to despair, or perhaps how you are still wrestling with the difficult decision of whether to hold on or release. Because wisdom is not simply the act of hearing or reading words, it is the process of living them, of embodying their truth in our own lives. It is the generous act of sharing what we have learned, so that others may find the courage to walk their own paths with greater understanding, compassion, and grace.